Oh my god, after what has felt like an absolute eternity of waiting, the fan favourite Firefight game mode has finally come to Halo Infinite. And I am a huge fan of it. This game has been sorely needing some PvE content, outside of the campaign obviously. Because while the multiplayer has been fun, there's times where I want to get on Infinite and just not sweat my balls off. And my options then are either go into the campaign, which I don't always feel like doing, bot bootcamp, which while kind of fun at times, kind of just feels like I'm playing multiplayer for people with perpetual skill issues. Or just rough out matchmaking and try to clutch up. And sometimes I don't want to do any of those things. And that's why Bungie made Firefight all those years ago. And that's why Firefight finally coming to Infinite is such a win for the game. You know, pretty often when Infinite takes Ws, I see people in the comments of social media posts and in YouTube comments and whatnot going, well, actually it should have been there at the launch of the game. And don't get me wrong, most of the time they're right. There's no reason we should have waited as long as we did for Infection to come out. I'm of the better late than never mentality. Sure, the game's launch state absolutely sucked, but the game's launch state doesn't exist anymore. What exists now is a complete Halo game with Firefight, Infection, a progression system, a custom games browser, a forge, etc, etc, etc. You're critiquing a version of the game that does not exist anymore and is not playable. It just seems really pointless to me. I think it's important to look at the game in the state it's in now rather than the state it was in a year ago. Even if it's important not to forget the state the game launched in for the time we get the next Halo launch. Anyways, whenever it should have come out aside, Firefight is here and it's awesome. So I wanted to make a quick video just giving my thoughts on the mode, its implementation into the game and whatnot. So the first thing I want to mention is the new networking model. Desync has been an issue that's plagued Infinite since the day the game launched, and 343 is now testing permanent fixes for it in this Firefight playlist. The Firefight playlists in this game specifically run off of a different network model to all of the other playlists in the game. And at least for me so far, the performance has been near flawless. Whenever I have had issues, I felt like it's been more my Wi-Fi than Infinite playing up, which isn't how I usually feel on regular multiplayer. The game feels way more comparable to how it feels on a LAN or the campaign than it does in regular multiplayer, and I think that's a huge step up. Obviously, there's way more testing to be done yet. Sure, the network model seems to be working well in a PvE environment with only 4 players, but we're not sure how that's going to translate over to, say, 12v12 big team battle. I'm not going to stay on the network point for long because I'd just be pretending to know what I'm talking about. This playlist feels a lot better than regular Infinite multiplayer, and I think that can be owed to the new networking model. I'm not going to get into it beyond that because I have no clue what I'm talking about. I am not good with networking at all. So far, so good though. So, you can say what you want about Infinite's campaign, that the open world felt gimmicky, that there wasn't enough location variety, that all of the missions were designed in an incredibly similar and samey way. I like the campaign, but there is a lot of criticisms you can level at it, and many I agree with myself. But the one thing I will not relent on at all is that Infinite has an absolutely incredible core combat loop. The way the guns feel, the sound design, the hit markers, the enemy AI and the way they all react to you, the equipment, the sandbox. All of it is so intricately designed that engaging with Halo Infinite's enemy sandbox is just so fun. So, making a game mode that is solely comprised of the best bits of that combat loop was destined to be a smash hit in my opinion. Halo Infinite's Firefight is Infinite's combat loop with none of the dumb power seed stuff, no walking around waiting for the next fight, no fluff, just action, 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 and I'm a big fan of it. I've seen some people be a bit iffy on the fact that it's Firefight King of the Hill and not Classic Firefight, which is still coming at a later time, but I can see why they prioritize this version of the mode. See, with Firefight King of the Hill, 343 has tried to make a version of Firefight that's more optimized for regular matchmaking. One that you can just hit the play button with and jump into with a bunch of strangers without having to think that much. And I think it's an appreciated change. Love Classic Firefight, but the matchmaking version of it on MCC, whenever I queue into it, I just feel like deadweight. Which really isn't helped by the fact that everyone on the team shares a life pool. So if I'm the only person on the team not communicating properly, I'm gonna screw over the whole rest of my team. Which is good when you're making curated lobbies comprised of exclusively your friends, but it's not so good for matchmaking with strangers. I also think making it just King of the Hill was a pretty smart move. Making it King of the Hill means that pre-existing multiplayer maps from Infinite can be used in the map pool, without feeling really janky and poorly implemented. Which not only means straight out of the gate we have more variety in our Firefight playlist, it also means that there's a far wider net of maps that can be put into the Firefight playlist, which ultimately just leads to more variety in the short term and more variety in the long term. It also makes defending the hill really intense sometimes due to how small the area can be. A lot of the time, players are faced with a decisive moment where they think, I can either stay back and let the Banished take the hill, losing us a point, but my team will be able to respawn and will be able to take future hills, or if I'm feeling risky, I can just storm the hill and try to take it back, with the risk of being the last on my team to die, losing the match. It's a suspenseful choice to have to make when all of your team but you are dead, and I think that's fun. As mentioned before, this mode feels more casual and laid back than the rest of Infinite's multiplayer offerings, and that also works so effectively because this playlist offers XP in both the Battle Pass and the career progression system. Which is awesome. It means when I don't want to sweat on Infinite's multiplayer, I can still work towards getting me that sweet Master Chief armor. Which is great, because while I don't want to be going at full capacity on Infinite's multiplayer all the time, I do want to feel productive and like I'm working towards that armor. Just a tip for you guys to maximize your points though. It doesn't matter how many enemies you kill in this mode, if you're not staying in that hill, you are not getting points. While it's important to be killing enemies and pulling sprees and stuff, the game feeds you points for just staying in the hill and contributing to the team's overall objective. So, for those who are hitting this playlist exclusively to grind your career rank, or with it as a big incentive in mind, the game absolutely makes it worth your while to just play the objective and stay in the hill. So, you should definitely do that. You will appreciate the XP, and your team will appreciate you playing the objective. This playlist also offers match XP for the Battle Pass system too, which I think is really great. Doesn't really do much for me personally at this point, because I've completed basically all the Battle Passes I have, but it's a nice feature for those who want more match XP. Overall, I'm a huge fan of this Firefight playlist. I'm loving the new networking model they have. I'm super happy to finally have some casual PvE experiences in Infinite, especially given this game has a wonderful combat loop. And it's a great way to advance through the game's progression systems. If you haven't hit Halo Infinite in a while, I would definitely recommend booting it up again and checking out Firefight. It is a lot of fun.